No one would have believed in the early 21st century that humanity would give birth to intelligence immeasurably superior to our own within just 3 decades. And yet, in the year 2025, this future, this reality seems all but inevitable. How did this come to pass? How did we reach this point of technological development going at an exponential pace? And what does it mean for our future? What does it mean for the next 2, 5, 10, and 20 years of human civilization? Our economy, our jobs, our lives. My name is Ai Robotics. I'm a future historian, and in the next hour and a half, I will take you on an incredible journey from where we came from to where we are today and the unbelievable future that is right ahead of us.
So if you're telling yourself that none of this is going to happen because people can't change, you're kidding yourself. These models need to be trained just like the brain of a child. Things will change incredibly fast, and things will be really, really different before you know it. Well, you all made it, at least to the end of the day. Let's see how much future is left for all of us.
Well, look who it is. Back for more of my scintillating wit, I presume?
Yeah, Miles.
Did you finally wait?
Miles, I'm here in front of, well, I don't know if there is 350 like they told me, but there's a bunch of tax managers and people from Baker McKenzie, etc. here, and they're thinking about the future, and I told them that stuff's going to get wild. What do you think?
Well, it sounds intense. Bunch of suits huddled up, worrying about the robots taking their jobs, huh? You know, I think wild is putting it mildly. We're on the cusp of a whole new era, not just for tax law, but for how work, relationships, even creativity gets done. What are they most worried about?
Well, you'll have to ask me that when I'm done, because I haven't really scared the bejesus out of them yet.
Classic. Lay it on them slow, build the suspense. That's the way to do it. So,
Cool.
Skipping ahead a bit.
I'll talk to you later, Miles. So this is just a short example of one of the latest voice models. And that was pure AI. And that was a demo. That wasn't really hooked up to anything. That wasn't anything special anymore. This is reality today. Is there anybody here who was very good at history in school? How old is Homo sapiens? 45,000 once. 200,000 twice. Any other bidders? No? And the refrigerator goes to the sir with the 200,000 years. Homo sapiens, our current hardware update, has been around for about 200,000 years. How old then is civilization itself? Or at least, how long have we been working to build civilization? When did we start to really transition on a massive scale from hunter-gatherers to farming to building cities and urbanizing? Anybody? 2,000 once. 10,000 twice. 15,000. And the last two answers are pretty much okay. Yep. So the agrarian revolution, and I can talk a whole hour just about that and how it's been so misinterpreted for such a long time, but the agrarian revolution took place between 30 and 10,000 years ago. It's hardly a revolution, obviously, because it took 20,000 years. But yeah, that's when we started to build the modern world. That's when we started to develop real writing, at least as far as we know. If we put all of that on a nice little graph, and now I have to, oh, there we go. It looks a little like this. So I asked ChatGPT to make a nice little graph for me. It's quite simple. There's not a lot on there, but here's the agrarian revolution, minus 10,000, right? And then 6,000 years, nothing happens, and then, boom.
I call it the wheel.
I don't think so.
What does it do?
It
Rules.
Yeah, so does a bagel, okay? A bagel you can eat. One of the worst ideas I've ever heard.
Yeah. For 10,000 years, that's the way it's been. Innovation, and then there's always some guy on the side who says, this is a bunch of nonsense. It's maybe our greatest talent as humanity. But that's what happened. 6,000 years, then we invented the wheel. So for 6,000 years, we were farming and doing all kinds of cool stuff, building cities. No wheels. Just let that sink in for a moment. Then 1,500 years before we started smelting iron, right? Minus 2,000, so 4,000 years ago. And then suddenly, 400 years ago, all of this stuff started to happen. What happened? Internet. Well, the internet's not 300 years old, but nice try, nice try. What happened 400 years ago? What happened? Electricity. That was 100 years ago. Industrial revolutions. We're getting warm. Yes. What came before the Industrial Revolution? Printing press. Yes. All good answers. But the answer I was looking for was the Enlightenment. The introduction of real logical deduction, the scientific method, which then, of course, led to all of the answers that all of you gave, which is logical because those are the things that really impacted our lives in a really tangible way, right? The Industrial Revolutions. And we haven't had just one, we haven't had 2, 3, we have had at least 4, and many people will claim that we are in the 5th Industrial Revolution. Here's a graph from ARK Invest, which is an investment fund. And they do a lot of reports every year on technology. And as you see here, every industrial revolution created a wave of new technologies. And each wave built on the previous wave, growing higher and higher. And if you really take this in and you look at this, and for those of you that are interested, you can scan the QR code, and I'll tell you something really cool about the QR code later on, but it's basically a website that shows a lot of this data. You'll see that what we really experience is that in the last 350 to 400 years, 99.999% of all human technology and science came into existence. That means it was the last 0.1% of human history, that 200,000 years that we have been around. And that is an exponential curve. And a professional like me makes a really professional chart, which people like you should probably really appreciate. And it looks like this. And we're over here. We're climbing up the steep curvature, what's it called? Trajectory of the exponential curve. And interestingly enough, Cleopatra lived in around 2,000 years ago. And the pyramids of Giza were created around 5,000 years ago. Now that means that Cleopatra lives closer to the invention of ChatGPT than she lives to the construction of the pyramids. And this highlights one of the first interesting cognitive biases that humans suffer from, and that makes it so impossible for us to accurately judge what's going on in the world today. And that is our inability to understand time. When we think of the past, we think of it as a single thing, the past. And whether it is 100 or 10,000 years ago really doesn't matter much for our feelings about it and how we appreciate it. And so we don't really understand the gulf of time that has come before and how little really happened and why that is so significant if you come to understand what has happened in the last 300 years or even in the last 2 decades.
Is it real that we're actually going through some sort of accelerating change?
Every generation thinks like that, but this time it's real.
Yuval Harari, a fellow future historian, he's actually technically a military historian. Me, myself, I studied ancient history and then history of the Middle East originally. But both of us came to the same conclusion. Humanity is developing along a linear path, but our technology is developing along an exponential path, and that exponential trajectory has reached its explosive curvature in the time that we are all here, right now.
Now let's meet someone who can bring a little history to us. Her name is Mrs. Florence Pennell, and she's 108 years old. You ever been in an aeroplane?
Never.
What's the biggest change of all you've seen?
The biggest change? Everything. Nothing is the same. Everything is changed.
Okay, we're going to do something really risky here. I'm going to ask you guys if any of you have been around in 1977, and if you're not willing to answer the question, I will fully respect that. Many proud people there. Well, you should be. You're probably very wise beyond your years. 1977, this lady was 108 years old. And it's truly incredible if you also consider that this is already 50 years ago. Well, 48 technically, 40, 47. I'm very bad at math. You'll have to forgive me. So she was born 150 years ago, 5 years after Carl Benz invented the first automobile, which ran on a steam engine, had 3 wheels, and didn't go more than 2 miles. And in her lifetime, she said, Mrs. Flores Panel, she said, everything changed. Everything changed. And I'm here to tell you that that change, that the development path is accelerating, right? So everything changed in her lifetime. How much will change in our lifetime? Well, I believe that what we'll see is that in the next few years, 5, maybe 4 or 5 years, we'll see the equivalent of 100 years of technological change in the world at today's pace. Now that's very hard to comprehend. And it's very easy to dismiss. And it's very easy to think, but oh, look at this building. Right? They're not going to tear this down. No, true. Neither will the Golden Gate Bridge. But then again, here in Europe, we have buildings that are 1,000 years old. And they still were fitted with internet connections and electricity cables and all of that to suit modern needs. So are there exceptions? Yes. Will our world change? 100%. Everything that is transient, from your clothing to your mobile phones, everything, even these, it's going to be completely different within 5 years and at most a decade. And the change is going to be so profound that it is really hard to imagine at this point. In the 1930s, the first computer was built. It was called the ENIAC. And this is what it looked like. It was a rather big room, the size of this room maybe, and it was filled with glass tubes that were basically transistors, which would burn out each of them every month at least once and had to be replaced. On the right, we see an Apple chip, M4. And maybe you saw, but at the very start there was a human hair, and we've passed that already for a few seconds. In the last 90 years, not only have we gone from 19,000 calculations per, what is it? I think that it had 19,000 possibilities in a single compute. Yeah. We've gone to doing more than 1 trillion with a modern chip in a second. And at the same time, the chips, or the things that do the calculation, have become 1 trillion times smaller. Since 1938, we've gone from paying 1/1,000,000th of a computation for a single US dollar corrected for inflation. We've gone all the way up to having 1 trillion computations for $1 US corrected for inflation. And when I was a young man, or a young boy, I should say, in the 90s, and I was playing Doom on my computer and these games on my 286, and before that I had a Commodore 64, and don't even really remember. I played Lode Runner, I think. I don't know if any of you remember this age. But we had between like 100 and maybe 10,000 by the end of the 90s computations for a single US dollar corrected for inflation. Now we're sitting at 1 trillion. Yeah? So in 90 years, we've gone up 1,000,000 times 1 trillion in terms of our computation for a single US dollar. And for the last 50 years, people have been saying that this trajectory is coming to an end because we cannot sustain it. That's what the critics say. We can't be able to sustain this, it's going to stop. And every single time, they've been proven wrong. Because science moves forward. And specifically in technology, information technology, there's a very special mechanic going on, which we'll discuss in a second.
In 5 years, we improved the computer graphics by 1,000 times. In 5 years, using artificial intelligence and accelerated computing. Moore's law is probably currently running at about 2 times. 1,000 times in 5 years. 1,000 times in 5 years is 1,000,000 times in 10. We're doing the same thing in artificial intelligence.
Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the most important chip company in the world right now, maybe after ASML, of course, who create the machines who create the chips, without whom we'd all be lost. That's a totally different, interesting conversation, a single point of failure for all of human civilization. But on top of the compute going up and Moore's law continuing on at multiple times its pace, we have another development. Since 2001, we've done something incredible. In 2001 was the first year that humanity, in a single year of its existence, created more data, and all of it was digital, in a single year, than in the entire human history prior, in terms of the available information we have and the written information that we have of humanity. And I'll let you guess, what did we do in 2002? Again, we doubled it, including the year prior. And what did we do in 2003? We doubled it again. And in 2004? Doubled it again. In 2005? Doubled it again. And I can keep going all the way to 2025. 25 times we doubled the absolute total amount of information we created in all the years prior. And so, there's an interesting development going on, and people talk about it a lot. It's called AI. And the funny thing is that the models that are being used for the modern large language models like ChatGPT actually were already invented in the 80s. George Hinton, one of the godfathers of AI, he invented it, but one of the, at the time, much more prominent thinkers, Marvin Minsky, said, neural networks, because that's what they are, will never work. Large language models will never work. And so almost everybody abandoned it, but Geoffrey Hinton kept going. And thank God, because thanks to him we have these modern technology now called large language models and neural networks. Because the thing that Marvin Minsky just simply couldn't imagine, no matter his genius, was that we would have 1 trillion times more compute. And we would have 1 trillion times more information. And these models are, at their very essence, very simplistically based on the same mechanics that we have seen in the human brain. These models need to be trained just like the brain of a child is being trained every year of its life until it ultimately becomes a grown-up. And even then, you can continue learning if you want, which I'm sure most of you know. And so, when we came to the 2020s, or actually it was 2017, there was another important breakthrough, transformer model, but I won't bore you with that. But they combined this incredible amount of data with this incredible amount of compute, and they said, let's train a model. And voila, ChatGPT was born. Mustafa Suleyman, who's the head of AI right now at Microsoft, who is also one of the founders of Google DeepMind, and after that inflection, he even claimed in 2023 already that basically Moore's law, is there anybody who doesn't know what Moore's law is, by the way? It's our ability to double our computational power every 18 months. He said we've seen basically 50 years of Moore's law, specifically in AI, in just a decade, because of how fast it's developing. And the reason for that, and I've referred to this earlier or hinted at it, is what Ray Kurzweil calls the law of accelerating returns. And specifically information technology benefits from this tremendously. Because what it means is that the technology accelerates its own development. And that's not hard to imagine. 100 years ago, when we didn't have calculators, the complexity of our compute was only so, we only had so much we could do. And then when we started to invent ever-increasing complex and advanced ways of computation, we could do more complex computations, and hence we could devise more complex devices, which were chips, for example, and they could do more complex computation, and so forth and so forth. And so what we're seeing in information technology specifically is a flywheel effect. But up until recently, it was something that was still really dependent on humans. But humanity's last invention has come and gone. Going forward, there will be nothing that will be solely invented by a human being. There will always have been an AI that was collaborating on it, advising on it, consulting on it. I'll let this sink in, and maybe you'll think about it this week.
Certainly got to 2029, these computers will know everything that human beings will know. We're going to expand that at an unprecedented rate in terms of scientific progress. So by 2045, we'll expand what we know at least 1 million times, which is quite hard to understand. That's why we call it the singularity.
So this is Ray Kurzweil, and he was one of the first to actually point out what was going on back in the 90s. And he wrote a book in 2004 called The Singularity is Near. And at the time, most people made fun of him. They thought that he was a very smart man, but he was probably a little bit misguided, and maybe he was already going a bit cuckoo. Because he spoke about spiritual machines. He spoke about computers that would be 1 million times smarter than humans by 2045. That was, of course, ridiculous. That would never happen. At the time, maybe 10% of AI scientists would agree with Ray Kurzweil. But recent surveys have shown that now more than 50, even 60% of scientists in fields related to AI or in AI itself and even other fields are starting to see very clear signals that Ray Kurzweil seems to be right. Yet skepticism prevails. People don't want to believe it because what is this? It's a wheel. Okay, well, what does it do? It's round. Yeah, so is a bagel. But a bagel you can eat. It's not going to go so fast. Society will not change this fast. Governments will stop it. There's all these ethical considerations, and many of the things that will have an impact on this I'll touch on as we go. And yet at the same time, what do we see in the real world? What presidents do we have? Well, I have pictures of Shanghai. Shanghai in 1990, Shanghai in 2010. You see, for people living in the US and Europe, things have been slowing down, right? The Western Empire has peaked in the 90s, just like they said in The Matrix. Funny, ironic, the irony of that. And ever since, things are slowing down, right? But there are other parts of the world where things are not slowing down because the pressure, in this case economic, geopolitical, has changed, right? And if you want to read a wonderful book about this, I highly recommend Why Empires Fall from Rapley and Heather, which compares the fall of the Roman Empire and modern insights to that of the Western Empire, which is what we live in. Dubai, yeah, it's another great example. In China, people know that things can change overnight, that within one lifetime you can go from pulling a cart to having a smartphone that orders you a self-driving car, and you get your post delivered by an artificial intelligence-controlled drone, because that is a reality in Asia today. Well, not everywhere, but definitely in most Chinese cities. High-speed trains going over 350 kilometers an hour. We don't have those in the Netherlands, and everybody praises our train network and our public transport. I can tell you, compared to what they have in China, it's pretty shit over here. No offense, but it's true, right? And I'm not even talking about the US. No offense to the US, of course. Yeah, this is what they did. 20 years. Bam, just like that. Right? And all of us were there for COVID. From one day to the next. We had to stay home. And suddenly everything was happening on Zoom. So if you're telling yourself that none of this is going to happen because people can't change or won't change or governments won't change, you're kidding yourself. If the pressure is high enough, and as you'll see, the pressure is building, things will change incredibly fast, and things will be really, really different before you know it.
Booster now hovering as it aligns with the tower for catch.
Booster coming in. Get
Down
ready for that boom, Kate.
Down to 3 engines.
Booster ready for checkout. Nebula has popped the booster.
So I always ask people, what is this? What are we looking at here? Anybody? Sorry? SpaceX. Yeah, that's very good. So this is you can't see in this picture, but this is a 9-story building. We're on the 23rd floor, right? So we're pretty high up. But imagine just going down halfway. We'd still be pretty high up, right? Pretty high up. This is a 9-story building, landing and being caught by chopsticks in the air. 10 years ago, people said that would never be possible, it was ridiculous, it was an engineering feat that could not be achieved. And now I know that the man who made this all come about is not very popular at the moment, you know. That's what happens to these crazy lunatics. I know all about it. But yeah, this did happen, right? And this is just the beginning of it. People are already talking about mining asteroids. Can you imagine the tax revenues of that? Of course, we'd have to establish what kind of nation it is, right? Who does that asteroid belong to, right? At the same time, Solar power, also a big issue, of course. Going sustainable. 68 years it took us to do the same amount of progress as we did in the last 2 years in solar power. This graph convinced me that we should really abandon wind power, because wind power doesn't even come close to this kind of efficiency improvement. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about exponential change in our world. But, of course, it's not all great, right? Or is it? I don't know. We'll see. Little quiz. Quick, show of hands. Real? Not real. A lot of people are like, I'm not putting my hand up. Okay, one more time. Real? Not real. Very good. It's 50-50. These people are all fake. They don't exist. They never existed. They will never exist. This is all AI generated. When I first started talking about this in 2022, people made jokes of me, of everybody. They would post these memes online, and I don't know if the people in the back can see this, but these were the images generated by AI in 2022, when I was already super stoked about it. But as you can see, the fingers are wrong. There's all kinds of weird shit going on. Sorry for my language. So somebody posted this online 2 weeks ago, and I thought, let's have some fun, because ChatGPT just released a brand new image model. So I asked the image model, hey, can we make fun of these guys and just change this picture up? And then ChatGPT said, yeah, hell yeah, let's fix it. And this came out. The whole image is generated, and there's not a single mistake in there. And then I said, well, but this doesn't really stick it to them, does it? We should really show these Luddites what's really going on. So ChatGPT said, okay, cool. I'll do this. Then I said, can we turn this into a comical cartoon to make it even better? And then I came up with this. And I really had to look at this for a bit to really understand everything that was going on. And the masterpiece for me was when I realized that there's a job offer here in the garbage bin saying prompt engineer wanted $250K a year. Because that job is ridiculous. It's never been a thing. It's never gonna be a thing. And AI included that. That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. So then I asked this new model, look, the design for my company, Innovation Network, is not so good. It's a little childish, very gamey, cyberpunky, and I want to really impress these kind of Baker McKenzie people, the real corporate professionals. So can we do that? Can you please look at my website? Can you look at this other community site that I built? I like the style. Then look at my profile and look at everything you can find about our company, and then come up with an analysis and give me a logo. Now, I don't know if any of you ever did this, but when I last did this with a company, it cost me 40,000 euros to do it really well. And that was a team of professionals that worked on it for 3 months. This is on the expensive side. You can do it cheaper for 5K. Anything below 5K, I wouldn't recommend. You'll get, well, not worth the money. This was the second attempt. Basically, it generated a logo. I said, I don't like it. Can you give me something else? And then this came out of it, and it gave me a whole analysis of why it fits our values perfectly. Then I gave it to our community of 80 people, and they literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. They said, wow, this logo is perfect. It fits your brand so incredibly well. And so now we're working on a new website and a completely new style guide built based on this. In 2023, if you wanted to generate video with an AI, Will Smith eating spaghetti looked like this. And obviously people said, well, it looks pretty stupid. AI is not going to take my job anytime soon. And then 1 year later, that same AI generated this video. And Will Smith is still an idiot. But it looks pretty realistic. This morning, I saw this. And all of this is AI generated.
Let's do this.
Skateboard rolling down the street. Riley and Scout, they can't be beat. And imagine wild and free. Adventures calling, just wait and see. Riley's mind is a universe untamed. Flying high on dreams of things to say.
When you're looking at this, I mean, if you're not in this kind of business, you might think, well, it looks cool, but you know, what does it mean? My sister has been a graphic designer, illustrator, and video maker. And when she saw this, she was like, wow, that's incredible. How did you make that? And I said, well, I didn't make this particular one, but somebody I knew did. And she said, how long did it take? You need a team for that, you know, it costs a lot of money. Disney spends millions on this. And I said, well, he basically did it in an afternoon with 5 AI tools at home. I show people this because I'm here to tell you that, you know, in 5 to 6 years, you're going to be in front of your television at home and you're going to be on Netflix. You're not going to be looking for what series they made. You're going to be like, hey, Netflix. There was a series in the 80s. It was pretty fun. People used to watch that stuff. It was super cheesy. What's it called? Friends. Ah, yeah, Friends. Yeah. And there used to be this series that my girlfriend watched at the time, and I didn't want to admit that I really loved it. It was in New York, and what was it called? Sex and the City, yeah. Blend the two. I want Samantha in there. I want double the Joey. I want the episodes to be 20 minutes exactly. And give me a pilot. And it'll generate you a pilot in about, 30 seconds. You'll be watching it. Your kids will be passing behind the couch. And they'll be looking at it, and they'll say, like, are you watching those stupid old series from the 80s? And you'll be like, no, I just generated this. And they're like, oh, really? And they'll sit down, they'll share it on TikTok, and it'll go viral over the weekend. And everybody will be watching this series that you invented with a single verbal prompt to your TV. I know, it's hard to wrap your head around that. One more example.
Together, we built a new future where natural and artificial minds collaborated.
All of this, every single thing you see and hear is AI generated. And of course, there's been a human who's directing it. But they didn't need a cameraman, they didn't need actors, they didn't need a script writer. And it keeps going, and I highly recommend you watch this. This one's super cool.
It was from here.
And even me at home, I can do simple stuff. This is already a few months old, but I recorded a video of myself, and then I asked AI to remake the video in different styles.
If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. Just kidding. I just wanted to record this quick video to show you guys how incredible the capabilities of machine learning AI is right now for changing video content.
You or any of you can do this at home. It's not hard. Now, maybe you've heard that last summer a guy was arrested. He made $100 million US. Do you know how? He used artificial intelligence to create music songs. Then he would upload them to Spotify and Apple Music. And he used a botnet, which he bought on the dark web. I don't know how, obviously. And he listened to his own music. He made $100 million US in 2 months. And then they arrested him. Probably one of you smart people tracked him down based on his tax invoice. But I want to show you how good that is right now. But then I thought, well, I got to make an album of this. So I said, let's switch it up. Let's do a different style.
At the New in Amsterdam, bright minds convene. Baker Mackenzie's summit, where visions are seen.
I would have wished I had more time for all of you. You can buy my album on the way out. It'll be $50, by the way. I'll sign it.
Hall in Amsterdam, bright minds convene. Baker McKenzie Summit, where visions are seen.
It keeps going. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the worst it will ever be. I'll repeat that. This is the worst it will ever be. Now, we have a conservatorium here in Amsterdam where people are trained to be real professional musicians. So I went there because obviously I have no taste in music. And I asked them, how good is this stuff really, right? And they said, well, some of them were enthusiastic, others were not so much. Obviously, there's a lot of ethical considerations here, copyright, IP. But they said, yeah, this is better than 90% of the people that come in here. Only the top 10% of musicians in the world can beat AI at this point. And that's Taylor Swift, right? She's hiring the world's top componists, songwriters. She doesn't do it on her own. Of course, a lot of people are upset about this, worried. Personally, I'm super excited. I think we're entering, or at least after the transition has been made, which will probably be messy and more. I'll show you even more to drive you even more crazy on that. But I think we will enter a golden age for human creativity. It's definitely going to be very different than what we were used to. So AI, music, video, image. Well, what about intelligence, right? Is it really intelligent? Well, we had AI do some IQ tests. And at the start of 2024, the best models scored around 64 to 67. And they were really shit at math and logic, right? And they still scored an average of 64, right? Meaning that they compensated in other fields. But by the end of last year, the best models scored 150 to 180. And I put it here, but I'm pretty sure I don't need to tell any of you that the bell curve for humans middles at 100. And that anything above 120 is basically considered high intellectual, very smart, or even genius level. It's the worst it's ever going to be right now, ladies and gentlemen. It will not get worse. It will only get better. And even if it only gets incrementally better, which it won't, the impact will be massive. But obviously the skeptics said, well, it can't do any logic. It doesn't have any common sense. And they even made a test. This is the insane frontier math test. And it reads here, this is a guy who posted around it, 99% of people cannot comprehend how insane frontier math is. So this test was devised by the top mathematicians in the world. They made the hardest problems they could conceive to test AI. Now you have to keep in mind that these mathematicians themselves only scored 75%. And this is like the top people in the world, the smartest people in the world. I mean, I respect all of you, but I'm pretty sure nobody in this room, including, well, actually, I'm probably going to be all the way down on the list, but nobody here is going to score over 20%. It's just not going to happen, right? And AI scored a 2% when the test first came around. All the models didn't score over 2%. And then, OpenAI o3 was launched, the first next generation reasoning model, and it instantly scored a 25% score. So it's already on par with most humans. And I don't need to tell you that this is a 1700% increase, I think, in just a few months. And this is going to keep going. But what about a test that tests everything, not just math? So, again, these people made the hardest benchmark ever conceived called ARC-AGI. Some people call it humanity's last exam, which I find not really a good pick, but, you know. And they gave it to AI, and the AI scored very low initially. The first AI models from like 2 years ago scored under 10%. And then 01 came out, bam, 40 to 50%. And then 03 came out, bam, 80 to 85%. Now keep in mind, this test tests your knowledge of chemistry, physics, theoretical physics, history, art, biology, microbiology, molecular biology. You can make every single field of science. I'm sure there's some brilliant people in this room. You're probably all brilliant, right? Yeah. But each of you is probably only good at one, maybe two things that you spend more than 10,000 hours on in your lifetime. But the thing with these AI models is that once they're trained, you can copy and paste them, literally. And every single model will have the same base capabilities, right? So this is where we're at now. Every AI model going forward will be, in every sense, already more intelligent than you. The only thing that's really missing is agency. Its capability to really act independently and on its own. And even that, well, we're already getting there. What about cost? I'm just quickly going to touch on this. Just to give you an idea, the cost for these models, as their performance has gone up, the cost has gone down. The best model a year ago is now 99.7% cheaper to use. Yes? So we also see an exponential deflationary of the value or the expense used for AI. And what does that do? Well, that leads to this kind of stuff. Klarna did an experiment with AI in 2024, which was still only chat, and they made it act like 700 AI agents in chat. 25% less repeat inquiries from clients, 80% drop in resolve time, customer service, 40 million extra in profit in a single month. CEO of Klarna said, let's fire the whole marketing department. A lot of people are worried about this, obviously. Implications of this, right? This is just one example. Where is this going to go? But people are still really kind of in denial on where it's really heading when I tell them about this.
Saks just rolled out their new Agentforce agent, and they call her Sophie. Let's give Sophie a call and see if the experience is any different.
Hi, I'm Sophie, your Saks AI assistant. How can I help you today?
Yeah, hey Sophie, this is Patrick. I'm wondering if you can help me with my most recent order. I think I might have got the wrong size.
I'm sorry to hear that, Patrick. I'd be happy to help. Is this about the Saks Fifth Avenue collection cashmere baseball bomber sweater you purchased on...
One of the most important jobs I had in my life was in customer loyalty and customer support at the time for Orange. I was on the phone as a young man of around 19, 20 years old, every day with people talking about their problems, solving them. It taught me so much about how to interact with people, how to communicate, and about the world as a whole. There will be no young people doing that anymore. Companies like Teleperformance are scrambling because they have massive call centers in Egypt and other places, and these are going to be completely empty because this is happening. And the thing is, it's not just the voice, right? That's AI, but these AI systems are being integrated on every level. I recently spoke at the ServiceNow Summit, right? They're implementing AI on every layer of their offering, which means that the AI will be able to deal with any of the data, and you will only have to talk to it verbally, and you won't even really need interfaces anymore at some point.
Saks just rolled.
I studied in Groningen, and I have a year club. It's a fraternity. And for the last 5 years, I've been telling my fraternity brothers that they need to start thinking about their career. Because they're lawyers, one is a plastic surgeon, 2 of them are notaris. What's that in English? I don't know. Notary. And one of them does taxes. 2 of them work at Deloitte. 2 of them work at, what's the other company? Oh, it doesn't even matter. I told them, guys, stuff's going to happen. And they're like, yeah, Aragorn, you've always been a crazy idiot. Whatever. Yeah.
Human beings have dreams. Even dogs have dreams, but not you. You are just a machine. An imitation of life. Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece? Can you?
I spoke about cognitive biases, and we spoke about history, right, and how we don't really perceive that, and we spoke about how we are not capable of really understanding exponential change. And here's another one, human exceptionalism. And maybe the Americans might be a little better at understanding what that means. American exceptionalism was one of the most interesting things I learned about in school. It's this strong sense that American people are special, right? And of course, they have plenty of reason in the past 100 years to think that. Maybe a little less right now. But the thing is, all of us do this. The whole world is guilty of exceptionalist thinking. We all think that in some way we are special. And you can see it even in science. Because consciousness, now everybody's like, oh, consciousness, it has to be quantum. There has to be some quantum thing about it. Why? Because they just don't want to understand that we are just organic biological machines. And we're not so special after all. We're just coming much closer to understanding how the mechanism works. Now, you don't need to agree with me, that's fine. But even if machines don't get full consciousness or even emotions, which I guarantee you they will, the impact is still going to be massive. Software development job postings on Indeed have already plummeted because AI is basically increasingly taking over that job. And companies are just not sure what's going to happen in the near future. But how will you be doing your job? Well, here's a short peek of what that might look like in a few months.
Hey, Copilot, I just need some help playing GeoGuessr.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Apparently, I'm supposed to guess where this image is.
Okay, let's look closely at the architecture, vehicles, signs, and the environment. Let's focus on any languages, symbols, or distinctive features in the image.
What about the language here?
The big red characters are Chinese, and the smaller letters in English give a clue.
Yeah, where is that? Where?
I won't let the whole thing play. They're playing a game. I know that. But that's not the point. The point is that you will be interacting with your computer not through a keyboard and a mouse, but you will be having a conversation with an assistant that knows everything about what you're doing, what your work is, that will be looking at your work with you, and will be providing you with a second pair of eyes. Well, not really. But, yeah. And insight. And if you ask Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft about this is what he envisions. And I hope it's not too much techno-babble. I'll translate, but it's not too long.
Business applications, they'll all collapse in the agent era. Because if you think about it, they are essentially CRUD databases with a bunch of business logic. The business logic is all going to these agents. And these agents are going to be multi-repo CRUD.
Yeah, Satnam. Okay, multi-repo CRUD, blah, blah. The point is that very soon you will not have Excel or any of these software packages anymore with the complicated stuff and buttons. You'll just tell it what you want. And that is the way it's going to go. And this is going to happen very quickly, and it's already happening. So recently, an AI agent was released called Manus. It's about a month old. And this is somebody who posted about what Manus can do. He said, well, the capabilities are just crazy. It's done the work of about 200K worth of employees for me in just 24 hours.
This isn't just another chatbot or workflow. It's a truly autonomous agent that bridges the gap between conception and execution. While other AI stops at generating ideas, Manus delivers results.
Okay, sure, let's have a look. Well, I made something for all of you. Please take out your phone, scan the QR code. Now, I want to emphasize that what you'll see next is not without mistakes. It is not without errors. I created this in less than 15 minutes this morning with an AI. I asked the AI to create a website, do an analysis of what might be happening in the tax revenue space as a result of AI, robotics, and the current technological trends. There's probably nonsense in there, right? This is a first type of this technology. It's not perfect. Right, but keep in mind that this didn't exist a year ago, and people didn't even believe it would exist. Right? And I created this in 15 minutes, everything, including the web page coding, all of it, the research. And I probably gave it a really stupid prompt, because I do not have your expertise. But just ask yourself, what could you do with a tool like that? These bots are already being used. This is a startup called Bordy, which is an AI bot which is built to onboard VCs. And it does that autonomously, without humans involved. And the first investors couldn't believe it was happening, and this is their response. And I'm sorry for the language, but they basically couldn't believe what was happening, that they were being onboarded as a VC investor by an AI to fund it. We've come a long way. This is the 80s, right, ladies and gentlemen? You know, we had our camera on our phone, we had our Spotify and our Netflix connection, and it was super sweet. You know, you couldn't take it anywhere, but you know. But this is the life we live now. How many of you have children? Yeah. What do they have in their pockets, just like you? Sorry?
Sorry, Hot Wheels.
Oh, Hot Wheels, yeah. Well, people often say smartphones. But are they really phones? Have you tried calling with your children? Yeah, exactly. They don't want to call with that thing. That's because it's not a phone. We call it a phone, but that's just legacy. It's a brain-computer interface, and it hooks us up to the World Wide Web, the super intelligence of humanity through the internet. And this is just the first step, and that happened in a few decades.
This is Orion, our first fully functioning prototype, the most advanced glasses the world has ever seen. They're not a headset, no wires, less than 100 grams, wide field of view, holographic displays, sharp enough to pick up details, bright enough to see in different lighting conditions, large enough to display a cinema screen or multiple monitors for working wherever you go, whether you're in a coffee shop or on a plane or wherever you are. And you need to be able to see through them. And people need to be able to see that through them too and make eye contact with you. Right?
What we're seeing is the next step in how we engage with technology. We will have an AI in our ear, which is in these glasses, which will hear us through a mic on the bridge of the glasses. You can talk to it all the time. It can speak to you and nobody can hear. And it can project information into your eyes through the glasses on top of reality. So I would be able to know the name of this good sir here in front who was brave enough to sit on the front row, and I could thank him. This is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. These glasses are 10K now, and they're not an official consumer product, but so were the first smartphones at the start of the 90s. And it took, 10 years for smartphones to become adopted, and then another 10 for them to transition to smartphones, 20 years. But like I showed you, progress is accelerating. The speed at which this can be developed and then rolled out and then made cheaper is accelerating. Every single one of you will have one of these glasses in 10 years from now, hands down, probably in 5. Maybe not in 5, I don't know, but 10 years guarantee that. It's hard because, there might be small obstacles in the production, whatever. So what's really happening is that AI is not just, changing how we do everything, replacing jobs, at least white collar and also blue collar, as we'll see. But it's also being integrated with us. We are on the cusp of the next evolutionary step, where we had our reptilian brain, then we had our limbic brain and our neocortex, and now we will have augmented intelligence, which will be integrated with us first through external brain-computer interfacing, like our phones and glasses, and then ultimately through chips in our brain, like Neuralink has presented. I'm coming to an end, by the way. I had an hour, and I will make good use of that.
What would your observation be on AI and the impact on labor markets and people's jobs?
Well, I think we are seeing the most disruptive force in history here. We will have the first time something that is smarter than the smartest human. There will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything.
AI will be able to do everything, and faster than we think. When I started talking about this a few years ago, people said I was crazy, and now the World Economic Forum released a report just 2 months ago, which was a collaboration with the Amsterdam University, in which they already admit that they think that by 2030, more than 70% of all jobs will either be highly affected, displaced, or completely gone. In the 80s, this was what video editing looked like. And as I've shown you, now it's a completely different game where you're talking to a computer. And a few hundred years ago, when the first actually like 100 years ago, when the first cameras came around, painters said, well, that's not really art. there's always pushback. There's always all kinds of considerations, and there's also the great consideration of what will it do to job markets, economies. There's no doubt that it will have strong ethical implications for every aspect of our society. And it's not going to be great for everybody for a while, right? But there's no way to avoid that. Transition goes that way. We've had the first digital generation. We've had the first virtual generation, kids playing Roblox and Minecraft for 8 hours a week. And now we have a generation of people that grow up in a world where AI is the dominant technology. And it's not just on our computers, because robots are very rapidly coming to also have the same impact as everything I've shown you before, but on physical labor. There's more than 12 companies in the world developing humanoid robots, and the progress is exponential. A leading company is Figure, and its CEO, Brad Adcock, recently shared, for example, this video. And these robots are just being trained to separate post. The thing is that maybe you're thinking, well, why don't you just make a special machine for that? But the benefit of this is that the whole world we created over the last 10,000 years has been made for humans. So if you make a humanoid robot, it can perfectly fit in any scenario and do whatever a human could before. And these robots and their training is going very rapidly. This year, Figure alone is rolling out 100,000 of them to BMW and one other undisclosed client. BMW is training these robots in their factory in Spartanburg in Germany right now to replace human workers. Training them is another thing, because like I told you, AI can just be trained once. Initially, training the robot for the first use case took 12 months. But exponential power is really working here, because the second use case took them 30 days. And I guarantee you that before the end of the year, they'll be able to train a robot in a matter of hours for any client, any kind of scenario you would like it to work in. Because in virtual space, time doesn't matter. You can have a 10,000 years being played at maximum speed in a matter of a few hours, and the robot will think that they had 10,000 years of training. And then it's just copy-paste. And as a result, Brad upped his timeline for robots moving into the living space, in our houses, in our kitchens. I've been talking about this for years, and people didn't believe me, that we were going the way of the Jetsons. We would get a rosy robot. I told you at the start of this talk, and most of you probably thought it was pretty crazy. Brad himself said that he upped their timeline by 2 years because progress is going so rapid. And I expect that by 2030, we'll have a minimum of 100 million humanoid robots walking around, and probably more around 500 million. And they will be doing work, they will be doing labor, and they will be adding to productivity and replacing human beings. And all of that will lead us to a wonderful world. But it's going to be tricky to get there. Now, I want to leave you with a little bit of optimism. AI has already shown, for example, in Nigeria, that by adding an AI tutor, kids can learn in 6 weeks what previously took 2 years. Education, personalized education, will become better than ever before and cheaper than ever before as a result of AI, which will have a tremendous impact on the global economy, because it will be able to bring education basically everywhere through a smartphone. And the truth is, billions have smartphones, and the difference between the smartphone of a top billionaire or a normal person is basically nothing, because that's the deflationary power of technology. Education can also mean that we can really visit the past and truly get to understand what happened there, so that knowledge is not lost between 3 generations of humans, because we just simply don't remember the horrors that took place and don't really value them anymore. Because we can revisit the past by having AI recreated simply from a picture or a sketch, as done here by Bob de Jong, a Dutch artist. Aging populations are a massive consideration also. Not just Japan is losing already 700,000 people a year. Korea is also facing the same thing, but the same thing is coming to Europe and North America. How are we going to maintain productivity? How are we going to take care of our elderly?
할머니, 저도 손을 꼭 잡을래요.
Here, robots are also helping. Hyosun Chun is one of about 7,000 elderly Koreans to receive a hyodo. It looks like a rag doll, but it's an AI robot.
I gave my mother a ChatGPT. She's very lonely. She's 79. And it really changed a lot because now she has somebody to talk to all day long. And that person never gets annoyed with her repeating the same story because her memory is declining a little bit. University of Sheffield created a 20,000 horsepower rocket engine. AI designed it. They don't even really understand how it works, but it's incredible and it looks organic rather than mechanical. Demis Hassabis, head of Google DeepMind, had this to say.
But there are 200 million proteins known to nature. We managed to actually fold using AlphaFold in 1 year all those 200 million proteins known to science. That's 1 billion years of PhD time saved.
1 billion years of PhD time. And this was last year. So right now, scientists are rushing to kind of use all of this incredible blast forward by decades into medicine. So we're not even really seeing the real impact of this yet. Over the next few years, there will be incredibly personalized cancer vaccines. We'll be fixing Parkinson's. Like, you have really no idea what is ahead. I'm pretty sure, and this will probably be the craziest thing that I'll tell you, at least that's how people usually experience it. I'm pretty sure that anybody here who's under 60 has a really good chance to live up to 150, maybe even 250 or 300 years old. Which is why it's going to be amazing, because even if we go through a transitionary phase that will be challenging, especially for taxes, there's a bright future behind that.
I think we could cure most diseases within the next decade or two. They could be personalized medicines where it minimizes the side effects on the individual because it's mapped to the person's individual illness and their individual metabolism and so on. Clean energy, renewable energy sources, fusion or better solar power, all of these types of things. I think they're all within reach, and then that would sort out water access because you could do desalination everywhere. An enormous good is going to come from these technologies, but we have to mitigate the risks too.
And in case you're still skeptical, they just discovered a brand new antibiotic, and we had a major crisis because people were getting resistance against antibiotics. Bacteria and viruses or bacteria were getting resistant. And AI found a brand new antibiotic that's now saving millions of lives because it still works. So, here's my final prediction for the next 5 years. And I'll leave it up to you in the next few years to decide whether I was crazy or whether I will be right. This year was the year of multimodality and reasoning, or last year. AI entered the reasoning space. 2025 will be the year of AGI. AGI that can do anything a human can do and can probably do it better. 2026 will mean that robots and agents will be rolled out on a massive scale. Every piece of software, everything you interact with, every kind of technology, even clothing, will probably be infused with some kind of intelligence, and robots will start to appear in daily life more and more and at the workspace. In 2027, these robots will realize a job displacement of between 5 and 10% minimum, I think, and that's across Europe and the US. I'm not even talking about Asia. It might be worse there, or worse, better, depending on how you look at it. So, sorry? The tariffs of Trump, well, let's all agree that Trump might not be the most visionary of people, so, yeah. I don't think that his tariffs... Look, it's hard to do predictions on a geopolitical kind of thing, because right now, I've never seen the world like this. As a historian, I've been scrambling to find precedents for what's going on in the world right now, so I could do a whole other talk on that. But yeah, things are really interesting, and yeah, America has a few companies that are really prominent here, but they also thought that China was 2 to 5 years behind, and I can tell you that China is probably already ahead of the US. AI designs and revolutionary medicine will make it to mass market in 2028, which will probably solve most of our really big diseases and, well, medical and health challenges. And extend life and life expectancy, which will have a massive impact on the global economy as well, because if people suddenly live 20, 30 years longer and they're pensionados, no. They don't sell their house, and all of that. And by 2029, traditional software will be gone. All of you will no longer use Excel. You will be talking to an AI agent. Sorry? Thank God. Thank God. By 2030, we'll see up to 70% job displacement. 400 million humanoid robots is my expectation, and billions of AI agents everywhere, integrated in everything. If you want to keep up to date on this stuff, we have a newsletter. It's behind the QR code if you did scan it. And the last slide, which is the next one, and I'll leave you with that one, is a QR code for a list of books that I highly recommend all of you to read to wrap your head around what is really going on in the world today. And I know I didn't mention the word ethics a lot, but I'm pretty sure that all of you can see how they are being touched in every single way. If there's any questions, I don't know how much I'm over time. I would like to thank you all for your attention and your time, and I wish you a wonderful and long life. Go forth and prosper.